Yeah, so where was I? Religious fundamentalism. I think it's going to simply get worse before it gets better. And the only reason it's going to get better is because the non-fundy people will realize that it's time to stop kidding around, or everyone is at risk, even and especially the non-fundamentalist people of that religion. In terms of what will slowly happen, like I said, blind faith, as in the kind exhibited by modern religious fundamentalism, will stop being considered a virtue by, let's say, mid-century to the end of this century. I think somewhere in that domain. And I think within 2,000 years, the persistent struggle against fundyism will reduce it to a curiosity on par with the flat Earth society, and it will be a difficult struggle, especially if there's some sort of conflict situation. What are the possibilities? Well, let's start. I think the worst possibility is there being a large religious war and the religious group actually dominating the entire globe. The most likely candidate is radical Islam, but I would not by any stretch of imagination rule out aggressive Protestant evangelism, Hindu nationalism, even many fringe groups within the Orthodox Church, affectionately known as the Old Calendarists. I really don't have time to get into that, but there are many fringe groups in Orthodox Christianity that are essentially the Eastern equivalent of the Western fundy now. In the East is a bit more of a harsher environment, so you can imagine that these kinds of people make Westboro Baptists look completely adorable. They're really fucked up and dangerous people, and we have to proceed carefully against them, but not gingerly, not by a long shot. So, yeah, and will we ever be free of religion? I don't think that will ever happen. Because guess what? If you take steps, let's say we actually find a foolproof way of curing fundyism. You'll just make room for the more virulent religious creeds that can resist this. Just the same way that, if you apply antibiotics to bacteria, the only thing you end up is resistant bacteria. So it's perfectly possible that just as we're forever plagued by disease, now I know I'm not trying to be insulting, but religion can be considered a form of mental virus. I mean, even atheism can be considered a form of mental virus. It's some mental programming in our head, belief about this world that we act on. But the question is, how benevolent is this virus? And I think that of the more aggressive, virulent kinds, we haven't even scratched the surface of how fundy a religion or cult can get. I think that within the next few hundred years, new religions, even ones without basis in believing in supernatural things, but new religions or ideologies will crop up that will absolutely blow our minds. That if we knew of them today, we'd be shitting our pants big time. I think but they will, I think, never have that kind of dominant role they have had throughout history until now. That starting from 200 years or so, these groups will be fringe and will continue to be fringe if humanity gives even a tiny bit of damn about its own mental health. It's as simple as that. So like I said, what are the scenarios? One, a fundamentalist religion wins out. It's simple. Next few hundred years, very shitty. Until people realize that the utopia promised by this religion simply will not come to pass, just like in communism. And they rebel, and then they wonder, what the fuck were we doing these 200 years? Humanity wonders. The same way we now wonder about Middle Ages, or us people in Eastern Europe wonder about the odd 3 generations wasted to communism. That is what's going to happen. This dominant religion, no religion will ever conquer the world, for the simple reason that as soon as it gets too large, it will splinter into many rival fractions, because power cannot simply accumulate into such a one center. There's always going to be rival interests, and when there's rival claims to power, there are going to be always rival attempts to legitimize this power, and that means rival religions. As simple as that. So no religion will ever rule out, but that will be an unpleasant world. Scenario 2, long religious war. Current dibs are on the conflict between Islam and the West. There's no point in that. Is the most likely conflict, and most likely Hindus and others would join sides against Islam. That would be a very unpleasant conflict, and guess what? My country is so fucking close to the front lines that this possibility genuinely scares me. But in the long run, it'll be just like World War II. Something you had to do for the betterment of the future. And even if 100 million people die in this world, or more, several, even if 1 billion people die, that still means humanity has survived, however big the tragedy. But if it comes down to that, yeah, it's what's got to be done. Third scenario is the one I think is more likely going to happen. It's going to be a form of protracted Cold War between fundamentalist religious centers and the rest of the world, and fundamentalist religious centers and each other. So it's going to be like, let's say, a Cold War between Islam and the West. The only difference is that the Iron Curtain will be on our side, effectively. I see immigration conditions harshening for Muslims. They've simply come too strong at Europe, and had they been more gradual, people would have had more time to use. But I think this is something that even the moderate Muslim community will help against Fundiism. I know there's a situation in Serbia, in the south, where there's a substantial Bosniak population, and there's currently bitter fighting between, let's say, the moderate Muslims and the Wahhabis. And the moderate Muslims are on the side of the government. So I think that's going to be more likely, and if there's another terrorist attack, there's going to be more terrorist attacks in this scenario. And I predict in such a situation there's going to be at least one attack within this 100 years in which 100,000 people die. But like I say, however big a tragedy that is, that's just going to be a small blimp on the radar of humanity's history. And the fourth is just the gradual secularization and liberalization and sort of benign modernization, but I don't see that one happening. So that's my take on the future. Thank you for listening.